A major shift is coming to one of America's most vital safety nets, and millions could soon feel the impact where it hurts most at the dinner table. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, has announced sweeping changes to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, commonly known as SNAP, with new requirements scheduled to take effect on November 1st, 2025. For decades, SNAP, formerly called food stamps, has been the backbone of food security for low-income families, seniors, and individuals struggling to put meals on the table. But under these new rules, that stability may be at risk. The changes are tied to the One Beautiful Bill Act, OBBBA, a law designed to tighten eligibility and enforce stricter work standards for recipients. One of the biggest adjustments is that the age range for adults without dependents or disabilities, known as ABAWDS, who must meet work requirements to receive benefits, will expand from 49 to 65 years old. This seemingly small change is set to have enormous consequences, particularly for older Americans who are not yet eligible for full Social Security or retirement benefits, but already face barriers to stable employment. You're watching Truth Lens, the channel that goes beyond the headlines to uncover the real stories behind the policies shaping America. We don't just talk numbers, we tell human stories. Stories about people like the seniors who worked hard all their lives, paid their dues, and now find themselves counting every dollar just to get by. Here we shine a light on what matters most to those who are too often overlooked, our elderly, our struggling families, and the millions of Americans living on fixed incomes. The USDA's new SNAP rules aren't just about eligibility, they're about survival. For many, this change could mean the difference between eating dinner or skipping it, between dignity and desperation. Under the new guidelines, able-bodied adults without dependents will be restricted to just 3 months of SNAP benefits within a 3-year period unless they can prove they're working in job training or volunteering at least 20 hours per week. These requirements aren't new, but what's different now is how broadly they'll apply. Previously, this policy affected only a limited age group. Now, by extending the age range up to 65, the USDA is sweeping millions more Americans into the work requirement pool, including many who are nearing retirement, facing health issues, or struggling to re-enter a workforce that increasingly favors younger tech-savvy candidates. For countless older adults, especially those who lost jobs during the pandemic or are living in areas with limited employment opportunities, meeting these new standards will be nearly impossible. One of the most controversial aspects of the overhaul is the tightening of exemption rules. Under previous SNAP policy, parents or guardians of children up to age 18 could qualify for exemptions from work requirements, but that age limit is being cut to 14 years old. Additionally, automatic exemptions for veterans, homeless individuals, and young adults aging out of foster care are being eliminated, while some exceptions remain for pregnant individuals and those with medical conditions that prevent them from working. The overall effect is clear. Millions will now be required to meet conditions they previously did not. This shift has triggered a wave of concern from social organizations, food policy experts, and advocates for the elderly, who warn that the policy could lead to widespread hardship at a time when the cost of living continues to climb. These changes come at a moment of deep economic strain. Inflation may have cooled in official reports, but for the average American, the price of groceries, gas, and housing continues to bite. For seniors on fixed incomes, particularly those relying on Social Security benefits averaging around $2,000 a month, every extra dollar spent on food is a dollar taken from medicine, utilities, or rent. The new SNAP requirements, which the USDA says are meant to encourage self-sufficiency, could instead leave many older adults and near retirees caught in the middle, not young enough to easily rejoin the workforce, not old enough to qualify for full retirement benefits, and not healthy enough to meet the new demands. It's a precarious position that threatens to push thousands of seniors into deeper poverty or outright hunger. The Center for Food Research and Action has sharply criticized the USDA's decision to implement these rules so quickly. In past reforms, the government offered transitional support or flexibility for states to adjust. This time, the rollout appears rushed with little room for states to prepare their systems or help beneficiaries adapt. The result could be administrative confusion and wrongful benefit cuts. Advocates fear that millions could lose food assistance, not because they don't qualify, but because they fail to navigate the complex paperwork or meet shifting reporting requirements. For those who rely on SNAP to feed themselves, especially seniors who struggle with technology or have limited mobility, these bureaucratic obstacles can be devastating. And the new work requirements will also hit non-traditional workers particularly hard. Think of homeschooling parents, gig economy workers with unpredictable schedules, or grandparents raising grandchildren without formal compensation. Many of these individuals contribute to their families and communities every day, yet under the new policy, their efforts may not count toward the 20-hour requirement. Organizations like AidKit, which partners with public agencies to distribute assistance, warn that countless people will lose their benefits not because they refuse to work, but because the system fails to recognize the realities of their lives. For example, an older adult caring for an ailing spouse or volunteering informally in their community may not be able to document those hours in a way that satisfies federal requirements, leaving them vulnerable to losing their benefits altogether. Meanwhile, state agencies responsible for administering SNAP are racing against time. The USDA's directive means that by November 2025, all states must fully comply with the new standards, but updating systems, retraining staff, and communicating changes to millions of recipients is no small feat. Many state officials have raised concerns about the logistical challenges, predicting delays and disruptions in benefit distribution for seniors and low-income families living paycheck to paycheck. Even a short delay in benefits can mean empty refrigerators and unpaid bills. As state agencies scramble to implement the new rules, the risk of widespread confusion and wrongful denials looms large. For seniors already struggling to make ends meet, this change adds another layer of uncertainty to an already fragile situation. Many older Americans on Social Security or Supplemental Security Income, SSCI, rely on SNAP to fill the gap between their limited income and their basic needs. For them, SNAP isn't a luxury. It's the difference between surviving and suffering. The expansion of the ABOD age limit to 65 means that seniors who might have just a few years left before full retirement could suddenly find themselves forced into job searches, training programs, or unpaid volunteer work just to keep receiving food assistance. For individuals dealing with chronic health conditions, mobility issues, or age discrimination in hiring, that's a nearly impossible ask. The USDA's approach underscores a growing tension in federal policy, the push to promote work and self-sufficiency versus the moral responsibility to protect the nation's most vulnerable. Supporters argue that these changes will help more people rejoin the workforce and reduce dependency on government aid. But critics counter that the policy ignores the economic realities faced by older Americans, particularly those in rural areas or industries where jobs are scarce. As the November 2025 deadline approaches, it's clear that the ripple effects of this overhaul will reach far beyond policy debates. They will be felt in households, kitchens, and communities across the country. For millions of Americans, and especially the elderly and those living on the edge of poverty, this new chapter in SNAP policy feels like yet another test of endurance. Across small towns and big cities alike, seniors are already making impossible choices between buying food and paying rent, between filling prescriptions and keeping the lights on. The idea that benefits could be reduced or revoked altogether is not just alarming, it's heartbreaking. These are individuals who have worked, served, and contributed to the country for decades. And now, in the final years of their lives, they face policies that make survival harder, not easier. As Truth Lens continues to follow this story, one truth becomes undeniable. America's seniors are carrying a burden they shouldn't have to bear. They've paid into Social Security, contributed to their communities, and lived through economic highs and lows, yet they're still being asked to do more just to eat. The USDA's new SNAP rules may be framed as a path to independence, but for millions of struggling seniors and low-income Americans, it could mean fewer meals, more uncertainty, and deeper hardship. With inflation still lingering and the cost of essentials continuing to rise, these policy changes could mark one of the most consequential shifts in the fight against hunger in decades. As November 2025 draws near, all the eyes are on Washington, but the true story will be told in the homes of everyday Americans, where the impact of these decisions will be felt most deeply